And now, The Money Show with Motheo Khoaripe
on 702. Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA Corporate and Investment Banking. ABSA is a proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa 2025. Today we mark the International Workers' Day holiday. Good evening and welcome to The Money Show, and a good rest to all the workers that have kept this economy ticking. My name is Motheo Khoaripe, in for Stephen Grootes this evening. We asked a question to start off: do unions still play a vital role in shaping South Africa's futures? Around 30% of workers in the country are unionized, most of them working in the mining, manufacturing and services sector. Andrew Levy, labor economist and MD at Andrew Levy Employment, will chat to us about the role of unions in South Africa beyond just bargaining for salaries. Then we look at how care is currency for companies and why employee benefits are the biggest battleground in the talent wars. People are looking for more than just pay now. It's the benefits that make them move to the different companies that they choose to. Blessing Utete, managing executive of Old Mutual Corporate Consultants, are joining us for that conversation. We also have Tech Thursday, looking at Apple's story. I feel like they tend to do this every year, Apple, always in violation of some regulation around the world. Some of these companies, of course, keeping a healthy budget for those court battles. But we will be talking about Apple being found in violation over its App Store rules. That with Suphumelele Zondi, the tech expert, joining us for that conversation. And if your money ends every time you get paid, so if on payday the money comes in and quickly comes out, we'll be talking to Terence Tobin, founder and head financial planner of Rich Ideas Group and certified financial planner, just to help us work out how to make sure our salaries last till the end of the month, firstly, but also how to invest them so that when we retire, we have a smile on our faces. Later on the show, we'll be looking at our investment school. And tonight, we'll tell you about the 6 easy steps to help your 20-something-year-old child build an investment portfolio and long-term wealth. That with Grant Nader, portfolio manager at Benguela Global Fund Managers. Let's talk money.
The Money Show
with Motheo Khoaripe
on 702. Let's walk the talk.
Well, around 3.8 million workers in South Africa are unionized, represented, of course, in major sectors in the country, that being mining, manufacturing and services. But beyond the strikes, beyond the negotiation table, we asked the question today: what is the role of the unions going forward, especially in shaping South Africa's future? We're now joined by Andrew Levy, labor economist and MD at Andrew Levy Employment. Andrew, welcome again to The Money Show.
Hello, Matteo. Thank you.
This great day always reminds us just the importance of those that keep the cogs moving in the country, in terms of the work being done, the productivity that then lends itself to better growth in the economy in South Africa. But they are protected, aren't they, by the unions that represent them, especially the around 3.8 million workers in South Africa. But the importance of unions in 2025, it's definitely a role that's shaping itself to be more than just, talking about salaries and talking about worker rights, but it has a broader role in the future of this country.
Yes, I think it does. And, if you divorce for a moment the issue of how unions behave, some unions, and one looks at the role that they fulfill, perhaps their most important and primary function is that they have provided for and protected the dignity of workers. And that's, been a developing thing. And in order to do that, they have been very focused and very important in the framing of legislation, which also protects workers. And they have made heard the voice of people who work and reflect the issues and the concerns of those people, which goes far beyond the bargaining. I mean, unions play an important role in health and safety. They play an important role in environmental issues. And hopefully they will play an increasingly important role in the framing of economic and political policy. But unfortunately, there is still a great deal of adversarialness in our labor relations, and this is because there's a clash of ideologies. The unions, by and large, are avowedly socialist, and they want to bring in the socialist revolution.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, they won't do. Unions have not done that anywhere, but be that as it may. And I think that in terms of job growth, it is a time to try and find the middle ground where there can be more cooperation between the three major parties, unions, employers, and the government.
In a country like South Africa where unemployment is rife, people look to unions to protect them when they're already in the workplace. But what is the role of the unions in making sure that in the job creation space, those policies, economic growth that speak to, South Africans at work, what is their role there in making sure that a lot more people are active in the economy?
I think that if you look at the unemployment problem we have, it's the single biggest and most pressing problem of a number of problems that we face. But we have nearly half our population who have no jobs, and one really needs to deal with unemployment as if we were at war with it. And, when there have been wars, traditionally in South Africa, in other countries in the world, unions, employers, government have acted in collaboration with one another to try and win the battle. History shows that time and time again, and that really is what we need now. And I think it would be useful if both parties stopped pushing their ideology of capitalism on the one hand or socialism on the other and said, what can we do to make our labor market one in which employers are willing to invest and to provide for growth, but at the same time, workers still have protection, but there is no abuse of that protection. Now, on that basis, we are about to have some far-reaching amendments to the Labour Relations Act, which indicates that they have to do amendments to correct it. It indicates that there are areas where it wasn't working, and a number of those areas are important, because they're aimed at job growth. So just to give an example, the new legislation will provide an exemption for startups and small employers, less than 50 employees, for 2 years from bargaining council wage levels. That's the first thing. And secondly, they will, again, provide special protections for them or relax some of the mistakes that are being made around dismissal. Now, those things were all discussed in NEDLAC. There wasn't agreement on all of them, but I think we want to see more of that and less of the ideology.
Let's talk then about unions and policy. Yes, labor laws, quite very important, their role. But we also forget that they're important in protecting the working class, South Africans that are far less privileged, those that are living below the poverty line. Unions still lend themselves as a big voice for that. If we look at the past few weeks in terms of the rejected VAT proposals, we talk about the parties that did that, but it was also the union voice that said no to this VAT increase, and that was quite important.
It certainly was, and unions have a role to play. And that was a very good example of where both employers and unions were taking a stand which, was essentially the same. And that is, if you put that up, it's going to increase inflation. It will decrease the purchasing power of money, and everybody will be worse off. That's not going to be the solution. The solution lies elsewhere. So if there can be more positive engagement around those sorts of issues, then I think we're beginning to talk on the right way. And you can look at some countries, I'm thinking of Ireland, the Republic of Ireland for a moment, where there was a three-way agreement between government, unions, and employers to go for growth, to attract investment, to build jobs, and it worked extremely well. So, if I had a message on Workers' Day, that's what it would be. Guys, we are fighting a bigger enemy than we recognize, and if we perhaps drop some of the ideology and focus more on the problem, of course there'll be differences, but that will be a more positive step.
How should unions then balance the role of hitting the streets and being that voice in terms of picketing and striking in the country, but also lending themselves to the negotiations, at the table? I know there's been a lot of criticism, especially in the country, to say we have a striking culture, and a lot of companies that invest and create jobs here in the country are fearful of staying in our economy because there will be one or two strikes in the year that challenge the company's, salary decisions.
Yeah, I think the starting point for that would be for unions to relook the approach they take to bargaining. Now, typically, they will all open up with a demand of 15% or more, and then, a whole list of other things. Now, they know when they sit down at the table that there is no chance of ever getting that. They know what the settlement level is like at the moment, and it's a third of that. But that immediately sets the parties up in an opposition to one another. So if unions could make demands and justify those demands in terms of their argument, then I think it would get a much more sympathetic ear from the employers. And if the employers could find a way to get unions to understand that productivity is good for all, a rising tide floats all ships, but in point of fact, it doesn't necessarily mean a loss of jobs or working harder and not sharing the gains. So I think we've got to get over that hurdle, because once we become more productive, we become more competitive. And once we do that, we start to grow. And once we grow, the jobs will grow as well. So I think we need some kind of working relationship, some kind of armistice, some kind of agreement which says, let's stop trying to force our ideology on the other side. Let us focus on the real issue, and let's try and find ways where we can find solutions to the collective bargaining process, which is important. It's a constitutional right, without necessarily going on strike over extreme positions. And there's nothing more wasteful than a strike, whether it's the employer or the union that makes an unreasonable demand or an unreasonable offer, and then they have a 4-week strike, and at the end of that, they settle for what they could have settled for had they been reasonable. So I think, they need to sit down and work out some kind of working arrangement for the next 5 to 8 years.
When we look into that future, then we talk about AI, we talk about machine learning, we talk about technology being, prompted up to say it's going to take over jobs. What should unions be doing? Are we upskilling workers, making sure that they keep up with the latest innovations?
Yeah, no, we're not. And, the interesting thing is, and this is a lesson that you learn if you look at the rest of the world, unions are not the currency of the 21st century. Throughout the world, union density, in other words, the percentage of the labor force which is represented by trade unions, has been falling rapidly. It's been doing that in South Africa. It's now well below 30%. And if you look at the unions that have survived and made the transition, they realized that the business they're in is not the business of bringing in the glorious socialist revolution.
Yeah.
It's the business of being service organizations to their members. And that could include legal services for them. It could include financial services for them. There are unions overseas that even provide travel advice and arrangements. So if they can say, look, what are we marketing? Let's stop marketing ideology.
Sure.
Let's start marketing a service to our members and get a broader understanding that at the end of the day, the interests of the working class are to get more people working. And I think that's a mission that employers would sign up for.
Some thorough insights there. Andrew Levy, Labour economist and MD at Andrew Levy Employment. Thank you so much for your insights this evening.
702 and Cape Talk.
Motheo is on X.
At Motheo_Khoaripe.
Let's talk now about keeping that top talent in the workplace. We chat about how employee benefits have become a crucial factor in the talent wars. Blessing Utete, managing executive of Old Mutual Corporate Consultants, joins us now. Blessing, are you saying people want more than just high-paying salaries?
Good evening, Motheo. No, thank you very much. And I think that's right. It's just no longer about the salary that people earn now that will keep the talent. I think employers now have to really look at what they bring together in terms of employee benefits that can help them retain that top talent. And also considering that the workforce now has 5 generations, it becomes quite interesting how employers can really be innovative around employee benefits to attract the various generations and keep them in the workforce.
Is this across generations? Because I know with the older generation, and I'd like to include myself there, money, 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 and I'll do the work as long as you pay me enough.
Yeah, it's not across generations. The generations are differ in what they require. I mean, that's certainly your perception, probably mine in our age band. But certainly, if you think about the Gen Z, they're looking more for flexibility. They're looking more for around wellness and mental wellness initiatives. So those things become more prominent for the younger generations that's joining the workforce now. So an employer, in terms of employee benefits, has to really look at the basket of solutions that they can offer to their employees that meet all the needs. So in a Gen X. Or a baby boomer, the traditional benefits, which is your death, disability, and retirement, those become prominent and more valued for that generation. But as you get further away, it's more about how do I keep well and how do I keep myself engaged and able to go to work every day.
The times are changing. Tell me now about unhappy leave. I mean, this modern working world, unhappy leave. I'd like to get some.
Interesting one that's come out from a Chinese retailer where they've introduced a 10-day unhappy leave. So if an employee feels they're not happy and they don't feel like going to work, they can put in a leave day and stay at home. But it just goes to underscore how innovative people are becoming around issues that can help attract talent. I mean, the whole issue of mental wellness is significant in terms of work. I mean, we've had a stat issued recently by the South African Depression and Anxiety Group that says 61% of employed South Africans would leave their job if they could afford to. Now, that just underscores the reality that many employees stay in their roles out of financial necessity, not engagement, and ultimately that does impact productivity, because if you're not really passionate about what you're doing and not engaged, you're not really going to give it your all. So it's a real interest for employers to look at some of these things that are happening globally. It's this unhappy leave. It's in other places they're trying out the 4-day work week, and all of this around the attempt to try and get a holistic employee well and able to do the job and to execute at their best.
Now, we're in an economy that's quite tight, especially here in South Africa, growth at below 1%, that fiscal drag that's expected to erode disposable income for workers. But companies are also under pressure because they're not making as much as they usually do. There's a lot of volatility on the market. So how do they make sure then that they are still able to keep top talent without having that payroll pressure, if you will?
Yeah, so there's quite a few new things that have come in. I mean, in terms of these wellness benefits, the things like bringing in an earned wage access benefit, which means employees can earn their wages as they accrue them through the month, and alleviate some of the pressures that come with sort of the week before payday in some instances. Those are some of the things that employers can do without necessarily increasing their sort of payroll. I think over and above that also is that employers generally have a lot more negotiating power with providers. And if they use that negotiating power with providers, they can actually sort of unlock some value for employees in terms of the flexibility that they can give to employees. So I think it's really about being smart, finding partners that employers can work with that can increase the value of benefits that they're being given to their employees.
But as companies, you actually want to make sure that you roll these out without, suffering the bottom line. So how can companies balance the benefits with, what they get from the loyalty from the employees?
Yeah, so as I said, I think a lot of these things are really just being innovative around the benefits that you offer. For example, your traditional employee benefits. I think offering one benefit that fits everybody, or a death benefit of multiple of salary for everybody, maybe is not the right thing. Maybe flexibility and allowing people to flex down and in times where they don't require as much cover, and flex it up. Similarly, on the contributions to retirement funds. Ability to flex those contributions up and down depending on circumstances of employees can actually help employees manage their finances better, and it doesn't really cost an employer much more than the structure that they've put in place. So there's a lot of things that employers can do in terms of unlocking flexibility for employees and the ability to structure their benefits around their circumstances at a point in time that can actually benefit employees significantly.
All right, that was Blessing Utete, a managing executive of Old Mutual Corporate Consultants, telling us how the new working world, employees there preferring better benefits than higher pay.
You're with Motheo Khoaripe on 702 and Cape Talk.
It's about 20 minutes to 7. Thank you for joining us here on The Money Show. My name is Motheo Khoaripe, in for Stephen Grootes. There's this particular stat that's been bothering me since 2022. FNB had released a statistic stating that middle-income earners spend 80% of their salaries in just 5 days. Now, this group earns between 15,000 and a bit over 40,000 Rand per month, and the money just lasts for about 5 days. 80% of earners. So just tells you the amount of responsibilities we have as people that are earning salaries, but also the tough economy we've been going through in South Africa. Our next conversation is how we make our money last beyond payday. That conversation with Terence Tobin, the founder and head financial planner of Rich Ideas Group and certified financial planner. Terence, welcome to The Money Show.
Thanks very much for having me.
When we look at earnings and salaries in South Africa, I want us, before we get into how to make your salary work for you, firstly, how do we make sure we get to the end of the month with our salaries?
Motheo, that quite easily comes down to a plan. Understand what we're earning, what we're spending it on, and be intentional about it. And the plan I'm referring to is your cash flow or your monthly budget. So creating that awareness.
Then just planning around, some of the things we pay for, the roof over our heads, the transport to get us to work, the petrol. Some people will tell you guys tell us to save and invest, but where is that money supposed to come from? So how does someone start to put away a little bit to the side so they can get themselves in a position where they can start even dreaming about investing?
It is hard to juggle all of that, and I completely understand. I mean, that stat is quite terrifying, that after 5 days we've used 80% of our income, and we've got to be intentional about it. So knowing what we're spending it on and managing our lifestyle. What often happens is there's lifestyle creep that occurs when we are lucky enough to get an increase or a bump in pay or create an additional source of income. We must allocate a portion of that towards some sort of savings. Even if it's as small as 100 Rand a month, those little incremental elements that we allocate to a savings plan and that we exercise patience with it will always pay off in the medium to long term.
What should be the split between our responsibilities, putting away money for retirement, and also some away for some entertainment, because we don't want to be miserable workers as well?
No, we don't. Look, there's no hard and fast rule. I think everyone needs to find that balance for themselves. I like the 50-30-20 principle. So 50% of our income is what we need to live on. So having the roof over our head, food on the table, transport, communication, those things that we have to have all the time, 30% of that income that we use towards servicing debt and lifestyle, so it's our wants, and then 20% towards investing.
Let's get into then making sure that, the money that we earn lasts us even after retirement. How do we put that plan together to make sure that we have the momentum while we still have the energy to work, but also it lasts us after we've put up our boots, if you will, and retired from work?
That concept of retirement is evolving. I'm finding that in practice with clients that I speak to. It's not like my grandparents that then, sat on the patio and did nothing. Many of my clients, even having left corporate or come towards that financial freedom day, that retirement time when we hopefully can start enjoying our lives and doing what we want, we need to make sure that our funds are allocated into assets that will continue to beat inflation, so your cost of living, as well as provide you longevity. We need to now make that capital outlive the investor whilst providing for their needs, wants, and desires, ticking those bucket item lists off and constantly review. So that's where having a financial planner with you that you at least meet once a year, sometimes a few more often appointments than that, to keep an eye on that pot of money and making sure that we don't start going into a situation where we erode the capital and you're not getting sufficient growth to cover your lifestyle.
Now, Terence, once you mention financial planner, alarms go off, ding, ding, ding. People think I have to pay some commission to this person that's helping me with my finances and is probably going to take away the money I'm trying to invest anyway. That's a big misconception. How can a financial planner help someone? And the fees are quite reasonable, aren't they?
So you definitely need to be aware of fees and make sure you understand fees. And a big one I want our listeners to take cognizance of is in the profession, there's two basic ways of being remunerated as a financial planner is through a commission structure. Make sure that they break that down for you. Don't run these percentages past and go, it's only 1%. What is that in rands? Let that financial planner actually show you the rands and cents. And then you have another type of financial planner which charges a fixed fee. Much like you visit a doctor and they'll charge you a fee for a consult, you can pay your financial planner a fixed fee for the consult or a fixed fee to design your plan. The nice part about that, absolutely no surprises, and you're in complete control of that entire conversation, the outcome, and how you pay for it.
Now, in order to have a war chest or a little bit put away to invest, you have to start saving. Someone says, I'm left with 500 Rand after spending on everything. How do they make sure that they put that bit away month by month, even if it's just 100 Rand, to get themselves to a point where they can start looking at things like exchange traded funds and trusts and things like that could help them grow their money?
But first thing there I want the person to have in place is an emergency fund. This is that pot of money that if the proverbial had to hit the fan and, life throws you a curveball, you've got some money to bail you out. Perhaps it's a tire replacement when you hit a pothole or the geyser bursts. It doesn't have to be a life-threatening emergency. But the point of that funds or that pot of money is that we're not going to go into debt to cover a hiccup that has now occurred. And again, many schools of thought here, but have at least 1 month of money immediately available before we start looking at savings and investments. We ideally want that somewhere between 3 to 6 months, and then sit with that financial planner to understand the different products, the different unit trusts, ETFs, and design you an investment plan. So you'll know that you can put 100 Rand into the emergency fund and 100 Rand into your unit trust and ETFs, and then review that strategy every year. And as life changes, we update it where required. And when it starts becoming a pot of significance, let's also then factor in tax and estate planning.
What are those investment vehicles that are available to workers, those that are affordable? Because when people hear investment, again, another misconception, they think you need to go in with 100,000 Rand lump sum. But there are investments where you can go in bit by bit and just build on them.
Absolutely. There's a number of service providers where the minimum starts even at 50 Rand a month. And that's where I often want to say to people is just start. Find a nice basket. Don't try and buy an individual stock. Find an ETF. These are what's called your exchange-traded funds. So it's a basket of asset classes available to us. They are generally very cheap. We've got the clever people managing those baskets for us. And let's just plug away a bit of money into it as often as we possibly can. Monthly is great. If we're able to do it a bit more often, even better. But the key element to this success is to keep it simple, make sure you understand it, and lastly, automate it. Don't let yourself do it. Set up a recurring payment structure that you don't have to worry. It automatically happens.
Now, the biggest mistake when people get into investing is soon after that, they withdraw the money because they're in some type of situation, which is why I guess you said we must have an emergency fund. But how do you keep that discipline?
The discipline must, I think, be linked back to a goal. If you know why you're saving and investing, if you know what that money is for, and you're intentional about that, don't touch that pocket. My grandmother used to have the brown envelope system, and that was the money for food, that was the money for electricity, that was the money for rent, and you didn't go and open an envelope that wasn't allocated for that expense. And we should apply that to our investing too. If this is the funds to put our child through school, no matter what, we don't open that for a Black Friday sale for a discount on a TV. We need to be intentional, we need to have a structure, and that comes back to the planning element of financial success.
It's often quite hard, especially in this Ramaphosa economy where you could live on just one salary. How important is it to join the gig economy, find ways of selling products, maybe reselling, to make sure that you have that little bit of extra cash that you can put away as an investment?
It definitely helps, and we need to leverage our skills and make sure that we can earn, if possible, that additional income, but be intentional about it, know what that structure is going to be. Also check from an employment perspective. You don't want to be in contravention of your employment contract and you're now doing something that your current employer might frown upon or feels that you're not allowed to. And when you do this, please understand that there is a tax consequence to this. So, it's not just going, oh, well, I've only earned a few $100 or a few $1,000 and I'm not going to tell SARS. You have to declare this as an additional source of income. The good news, however, is the expenses incurred to produce this additional income can be offset. You can claim that back. You can deduct that from your income earned. So we can offset and hopefully then reduce your tax liability as much as possible whilst trying to soften the blow of the expensive economies that we find ourselves in and the high cost of living.
South Africa now has a two-part retirement system where people can dip into their savings. How much should we encourage people not to just pay off immediate debt and things that they need to take care of, but also put away some of that money into other vehicles, making sure that they have their eggs in other baskets in terms of their portfolio?
We've seen the numbers there. Tens of billions of rands have been taken out of the retirement system due to the two-pot, and SARS has made billions in additional revenue. And once again, this really is on a case-by-case basis. And when it started coming out and we were researching and understanding before it was available to all of us on the 1st of September 2024, I had that blanket approach of never touch it because it's for retirement. And I still fundamentally believe that retirement investing is for that, hence the name retirement funds. But I've also had stories where, a single mom can't afford to put her children through school, and once a year she has to take her pension money out to pay for their education. So she's investing in her children. She's in this rock and a hard place and has to touch that money. What we need to be aware of is when we take that money out, SARS will tax us, because when we put the money in, SARS gave us a tax refund. So it's only fair. What we need to see, though, is the consequence of withdrawing that money now versus leaving it invested for the decades it should be, and what loss of income we're actually going to have one day at retirement. So once again, understand the consequences of our decisions.
Yeah.
Be intentional about it and know what you're doing.
That was Terence Tobin, founder and head financial planner at Rich Ideas Group, telling us how to make sure we make our salaries and earnings work for us.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking. Absa is a proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa 2025.
Now, South Africa has a great legacy of having exceptional winemakers. But what happens to the next generation? Are we bringing up those young people that will give us the best pinotages and the best white wines that come out of this region? There's a particular competition that is focusing on winemakers and making them more professional. And we're going to be talking now to Tian Erasmus, I2's regional head, about their involvement in the Next Generation Awards. Tian, welcome to The Money Show.
Thank you, Motheo. Good evening to you and good evening to the listeners.
Tell us more about this particular conversation and initiative and why you as I2 decided to back it.
Yeah, thanks, Motheo. So we got involved in this initiative in collaboration with WineMag as I2 Special Risks. We felt two common themes coming through is supporting a next generation of winemakers under 35 years of age, to support them, as well as the developmental and diversity aspect. So when the opportunity for a sponsorship came up, it's a brand new award. We made contact with WineMag, saw the opportunity to really invest and spend, invest and support young winemakers. Everybody's got to start from somewhere.
Now, when it comes to farming, and I'm sure it's probably a bit similar with winemaking as well, we often think that it's for older people that farm cattle and those that farm different things like citrus. And those that are winemakers, we often see grey-haired people that have been in the game for a long time. So why the focus on young people?
Yeah. Young people are our future. They're our future leaders. And, any young person, might just need a break at some point in time. There are also some very established winemakers in South Africa. And this is an opportunity for their assistant winemakers, for somebody that's unknown, to really go out there, set about and make a name for him or herself.
What has been the response from the country's young people in terms of getting involved in this particular project, the Next Generation Awards, and what type of skills do they walk away with once the process is done?
Yeah, so entries are still open. So far, we see that the response is very positive, and it's the first year that WineMag and I2 is hosting this award. So we hope to do this annually. But what we want them to come out of this is really some recognition, recognition within the industry, and also within the wider wine drinking public as a whole.
It gives me a sense then that this competition is quite, practical, because last year's awards saw 62 wines from 37 winemakers. So you really get your hands dirty and really produce some of these products that we hope will be on the shelves.
Yeah, so winemaking is all about getting dirty. These people are, after all, farmers. They're involved in agriculture. They're passionate about agriculture, the entire value chain in agriculture. Not only do they know about winemaking, but they do know about cultivating grapes, protecting the soil, the environment around them. So yeah, cultivating this in a younger, in the next generation, also helps us and helps us and preserve, fine wine and good wine and the agricultural industry in a whole, for our children and grandchildren.
Tian, I guess the biggest award here, biggest prize would be walking away with the skills that you gained during the process. But is the prize money for the participants?
Yeah, so there's for the first or for the winner, there's 10,000 Rand cash prize, and the runner-up 2,500 Rand. But we also, as you mentioned, other than the skills, we also hope it's an opportunity for the winner or the runner-up, any of the top 10, to step up, create their own label, and just really take a risk on themselves.
That was Tien Erasmus, I2's regional head, talking to us there about the Next Generation Awards. Now, to qualify, entrants for the Next Generation Awards must be 35 or younger on the date of the awards ceremony. That's the 20th of June 2025. Entries close on Wednesday, the 28th of May 2025. Next Generation Awards. If you want to be a winemaker, get involved.
And now, The Money Show with Motheo Khoaripe
on 702. Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking. Absa is a proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa 2025. Now, I feel like Apple does this almost every year. They're always in court for some or other violation. This time, found to be in willful violation of the injunction that allows developers to refer customers to third-party payment methods. The latest ruling in the Apple versus Epic Games case means Apple needs to update its App Store policies immediately. We talk tech now with Siphumelele Zondi, the tech expert, to explain just how much trouble Apple is in. Siphumelele, welcome again to the Money Show. Looking at this particular case, it almost seems like Apple has a war chest for some of these battles, because I know they're quite precious with their App Store. They don't want anybody to just jump in and start selling their apps there. But they were found to be in the wrong once again.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is a case that's going back to 2020 when they first kicked Epic Games, or Fortnite rather, which is owned by Epic Games, out of the Apple Store. And Epic went to court. They did win that court case in 2021. Apple appealed, and eventually they lost that appeal in 2024, but they didn't back down. So the latest ruling now is even mentioning contempt of court by Apple for not abiding by the previous ruling, which favored Epic Games on its Fortnite, essentially having to be brought back to the App Store.
And what were those Apple limitations that led to Fortnite being kicked out of the Apple Store?
The issue here is that Epic seems to have found a way to link people to their own space where they can download, where gamers can download the game and not pay the 30% charge that Apple takes for app downloads on their store. It seems like they found a way, and then Apple said, hold on, you can't come to our space and then lead people to a space where they can download it for less of a charge and not give us our share, which is the 30% that we charge for every app on the store. And this is where basically the issue came from. And they said, well, because you're not listening to us, we'll kick you out.
Now, will gaming fans see Fortnite returning to the App Store soon after this particular ruling? Because if a gaming company can find a way to bypass the App Store, I'm sure it will encourage others to do the same. I'm not seeing Apple inviting them, or will there be a court order forcing them to have the gaming platform on their App Store?
Well, they're supposed to now, especially now there are even conversations about being in contempt, right, for ignoring earlier rulings. So this is what's supposed to happen possibly as early as next week, but that's in North America, right? Because this is a North American court, this is a North American company. What they've done was to kick them out in other markets as well around the world. It's not clear what's going to happen in other markets around the world, or where they might say, well, they're back on in North America because and not back in other territories. And then maybe it needs to be tested as per territory, or whether it's going to be a blanket cover, like previous cases where we found when big tech has been taken to courts, like you remember the charging debacle in Europe, for example, when it then became the charger became a universal charger around the world. So it could be that, but essentially, though, you might ask, what then is in it for Apple if they can't take this 30% extra? But the judge did say here that it possibly could have been okay if it was 5%, but 30% is too large.
Excessive,
and also mentioned anti-competitive behavior, because if you charging 30% and you're saying they can't go elsewhere to go and find it, or they shouldn't be linked to other spaces to go and find it, then you try to create some sort of monopoly here for people to download it from your particular app store. So that's basically, the judge said 30% is just too large.
I mean, this is looking like a precedent-setting type of a ruling from Judge Gonzalez Rogers, because the judge now says Apple cannot make a commission on purchases made outside of the app. So if a third party bypasses their system, they can't ask too many questions, and it can't force developers to disclose how much money is made from those links, making business for Apple quite tricky now.
It's going to be tricky because I foresee a situation where other developers, especially your up-and-coming developers, the small guy who's probably sitting in a room somewhere and is testing their apps, I foresee them doing exactly the same thing that has been done by Epic Games here. Because what's to make them different from Epic? Yes, it's an Epic ruling, but at the same time, if it's an Epic ruling, it should then apply to just about everybody who uses the Apple App Store.
And how do you expect other gamers to jump on to this? Because if they're being allowed to have a third-party access, to some of their users, this is really, really huge for gaming around the world and not just in North America.
Oh, yeah, and we do know that there's massive growth as well of gaming around the world. I believe it's an industry of about $455 billion US dollars as things stand right now. So it is huge, and especially for guys who want to get into the gaming space. And also here, I think maybe Apple is probably going to take some time. They need to move with it because they've ignored previous rulings. They're in trouble here, and basically give direction on what's to happen, because they also need to take their cut, right? Because what Epic as well has gone and done is to say, if you download your game directly from them, you'll be getting it completely for free for now, and other gamers and gaming developers might go and do the same. So Apple possibly needs to come out very quickly to say what is the way forward, and perhaps maybe say that we might keep the method of stopping people from going to third parties, but maybe we will reduce the charge, because that's also what was highlighted by the judge, to say, well, you're also charging a bit too much. And maybe if they go down to, let's say, 10%, 5%, but I'm not sure if they can bypass it, because there seems to be a huge loophole here, especially for gaming developers.
I mean, this is going to be a big headache for Apple. More than 400 million registered users of the game Fortnite. But talking about gaming and headaches, Xbox controllers could be going up. Tell us why that is, and is this limited to just Xbox in terms of consoles?
So Nintendo has also mentioned that they will be increasing their prices for, not necessarily for the console, but for the controls. And Xbox as well, it's for the controls. They haven't quite said why. What Microsoft has said here is that is basically because of the direction the market is taking. But I can bet that it's linked to those tariffs in the United States of America.
And where they're made.
Exactly, it's where they're made, even though they haven't come out to say, well, it's tariffs, because we do know that Amazon sort of got a tongue lashing there in the US for saying that they'll start putting up prices of how much tariffs are adding to each item. And the government there said, well, you're being political by doing that. And so you can bet that it's linked to those tariffs, even though they haven't said that is quite the reason.
That's quite unfortunate, because in my memory, controllers were always the cheapest thing you could buy with a console, because the games were expensive, the console was expensive, but controllers at least you could still afford. So if you happen to drop one, you could just go to the store and buy it. But because of these higher tariffs and where some of this technology is made, it's going to be quite tricky. Very, very thorough insights there from Siphumelele Zondi, a tech expert, talking to us about Apple being in the hot seat, if you will, in terms of being in trouble with gamers, but also controllers going up because of those pesky tariffs. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
The Money Show with Motheo Khoaripe
On 702.
702.
The Small Business Focus is brought to you by Capitec. No matter the size of your business, Capitec's got you. Let's get into small business and things that excite me, startups, funding, and those innovative minds that make sure that the economy keeps ticking. Talking now to Bulelani Balabala, business speaker, media contributor, and township entrepreneur. Talking to us about the Township Entrepreneurs Agency's Kasi Pitching Challenge that has dispersed a lot of funds to innovative entrepreneurs across the country, but they still seek to do more. Bulelani, welcome to the Money Show tonight.
Good evening, Motheo, to you and your listeners, and also happy Workers' Day.
Happy Workers' Day to you. Let's just keep working, won't we? Now, the Kasi Pitching Challenge. When I hear pitching, I get nervous myself. The elevator pitches, making sure that your numbers are right, making sure that you can convince investors to put money into your business. Tell us more about this particular initiative.
Thank you so much, Motheo. I mean, the Kasi Pitching Challenge, the challenge that we developed and launched in 2022. I think before then, because we have a community of over 80,000 township entrepreneurs that we've been working with now for a solid 10 years, we then decided, and we had hosted a number of different pitching competitions and challenges, but however, we then decided to structure this particular one to kick off in 2022 in Davidson, I think as part of the rollout of our main workshop program, which is the Kasi Business Workshops. And I guess the main thing there was, number one, to teach the entrepreneurs about how to pitch, what goes into a pitch, to put them in front of a pool of judges who would then adjudicate and also give them constructive feedback around what they need to then fix and get right. And then we'd then select these 6 finalists who would then plug into the business on the day. But also for us, it was materially important to then say, well, so after this pitch, so what? Which is why then we developed this blend, 50,000 Rand grand prize, which is a blend of both cash as well as business support, where we've had a number of, I think about 33 pitch winners nationwide over the past 3 years, who have gotten everything from working capital to machinery and equipment. Some were able to move from, I think, like I quote a lady by the name of Lufuno, who runs a detergent business called Tosh. She won the first challenge, which was in 2022 in Olivenhout Bosch, and out of that she was mixing detergent and soap from a bucket in her garage at home. Out of that, she bought her first mixer. Today, she's in a factory, employing 15 permanent staff members. We are not saying that it's us, but we are saying that we are playing that small 0.05% shift in helping these amazing entrepreneurs grow their businesses.
This is very interesting, the approach that you're taking. You don't have to be pitch perfect on the day. You can come there, be taught how to present yourself and market your business and how to outline what you exactly do. Then you get into the competition process and you could still be in line to win some sort of disbursement to help build your business.
Yeah, definitely. I think the approach that we're taking is because of the communities and spaces that we operate in, some are very rural, some are, it's a mix of rural and township. We then are very cognizant of the fact that even though they might have a passion for standing on stage and talking about their business, but we almost then setting them up, not necessarily setting them up for failure, but we could empower them better. Which is why even, when you are selected as a finalist, from that 1-minute pitch video and your compliance documents, we then also take the deep step of, setting up a session to take you through the pillars that the judges are going to look for, so that we also then make the day's proceedings very competitive. And also then we leave you with that soft knowledge, whether you want or not on the day, for you to be able, soft and practical knowledge, for you to be able to know some of the basic things that might be required from you as you go and pitch to various other institutions, whether it's banks, DFIs, other pitching challenges, and even if you're just pitching for business.
what we often hear about small businesses is that firstly they are informal in most of them, but also that the business owners get hit a glass, if let's put it that way, when they need to go and find some of this funding, especially from traditional institutions like banks. Do you also take them through how to make sure that process is clinical in order to get the funding, but also how to make sure that their business has a system that can be followed and their books are in the right place so that when investors come, everything can be ticked off?
Yeah, no, so definitely. But however, with that particular part of the pitching masterclass, what we then do is that for the guys who are pitching on the day, we then do a masterclass specific to how you pitch on the day and given 3 minutes. But however, what we then do is that we then host online alumni masterclasses for anyone who wants to participate. And there we then do deep dives on various topics, digitization, pitching to a DFI. I think that the pitching one has come up. It's such a major one when we had our feedback sessions with the various cohorts, with the 3 cohorts. That will be doing it between the month of May. From the 14th of May, we've got a masterclass, as well as the second week of June as well. On a Wednesday at 9 p.m., we've got a free masterclass. We normally share the Zoom link, but we're then going to be unpacking the different types of pitches, how you pitch, and then also prepping the documents and what you need to put in those documents as well.
When you look at this initiative that you have started, and one that has touched, I'm sure, a lot of lives, more than 2,000 entries, 198 township business finalists. So you've gone around the country and made the effort. Are you garnering support from the private sector, from government as well, to make sure that, look, this is a great initiative, let's give you some backing, maybe even insights and expertise to make sure that you reach even more people?
Yeah, I mean, I think in order for us to be able to even give out this 50,000, we got some corporate support. However, I think the big thing for us is really to deliver impeccable work. Because I think initially in crafting this pitching challenge, like I said in the beginning, it came out of the Gasi business workshops. So which meant that initially our go-to-market was the Gasi business workshop. But I guess because I'm an entrepreneur who works with other entrepreneurs, I've been in business for about 19 years now. I mean, I've got the insatiable desire to consistently innovate. So I think just going out into township to train was not enough. So which is why we then said, no, let's push the button a little bit. Let's create a product within a product that will be beneficial to our people so that it's not another talk shop, even though it's going to be a practical one, but at least there's a leave behind. Because in reality, I think about 80% of these amazing micro enterprises who attend our workshops have got registered, fully functional businesses with an average operational, been operating on an average of about 3 to 5 years. So I think our big thing is to demonstrate a product and take it to market for support. But however, now what we've then done now is we're also then taking a very deep and concerted effort to go back to the government institution, the DFIs, the banks, the corporate institutions to say, we've been talking, but here's something constructive that we want for you to jump on top of so that we then roll off. Because we've already started with these nationwide, what you call them, pitching challenges, let's potentially work together towards doing a grand one in November, Global Entrepreneurship Month, so that it becomes impactful, but also for the township. Because I think, as you would see, there's this challenge that has been going around, talking about giving out $1 million. I think it's done by the Startup Club. So our thing is, why can't we give out $1 million to 20 or to 30 township businesses that will pitch at the grand day?
I mean, there's been the buzzword now is, of course, the township economy and how the country's gearing itself policy-wise to make sure that more businesses in that particular economy, the Gasi economy, is going to be supported. I see there is a concerted effort, at least from your side, to make sure that those entrepreneurs are ready as soon as those funds are dispersed. But are you also getting them ready for handling major funds and making sure that they can run the businesses in a sound way?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think one of the things, the moment, for instance, on the back of this 500 million rand Puzzle Shop Fund, the moment it was announced that the moment they launched it, we had already started preparing on our side as Puzzle Shop Fund Readiness Program. Because in reality, we have seen with the various funds that were announced that at the end of it, we then see the doom and gloom reports of the fact that only 10% of the funds went to local businesses, and then the sort of responses that we consistently get is they were non-compliant, the guys weren't ready, so which is why we gave to the ones who were ready, and then when we unpack the race or the demographic of the ones who were, then it's an almost outcry in the country.
No more excuses.
So no more excuses. That's our view. So we are now saying, okay, cool. The government might have its own process. Our job is not to thwart the government's process, but to help them. So can we then rally corporates to support the initiative of getting these small townships, puzzle shops ready for that 500 million rand, so that government officials have no excuses around who they were able to fund. Hello?
Because we're running out of time, I'd like for you to just share some of the details of how the entrepreneurs can enter this particular round of the pitches. I know the deadline is on the 7th of May. Just what do they need to qualify?
Basically, the criteria, you must be operating for business based and operating in the township, operating for 2 years plus, 51%, BE level 1, a micro enterprise. And really, you click on the link. You simply go on our social media platforms. We are Join Us for Tea. So if you just simply click on that, if you just simply search Join Us for Tea on every social media platform, you're going to find us and we're going to pop up.
Yeah.
Then follow us. The details are on our bio and on the link.
All right, that was Abulelani Balabala, business speaker, media contributor from the Township Entrepreneurs Agency that runs the Kasi Pitching Challenge.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking. Absa is a proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa 2025.
The Money Show.
Investment School.
The Investment School is brought to you by CFI, a leading global trading platform now available in South Africa. CFI Financial is an authorized financial services provider. Class is in session on Thursday, and tonight our head teacher is Grant Nader, portfolio manager at Benguela Global Fund Managers, telling us about the 6 easy steps of getting those in their 20-somethings to build investment portfolios and long-term wealth. Now, this particular period in your life is often characterized by spending too much money and consumption-led indebtedness. But if you do put away the money in your 20s, you have about 40 years to amass some wealth. And I'll be joined now by Grant Nader. Grant, welcome again to The Money Show. This is a very, very important conversation. In fact, I wish I was listening to the radio in my 20s with somebody talking about something like this.
It is so relevant, and I myself have a couple of teenage kids, or a few teenage kids that I'm trying to lead in this direction as well. So it's very relevant and very close to my heart as well.
In our 20s, we start earning a bit of money and obviously feel a bit more independent. We want to buy the things that we want and like without our parents telling us what to do. But just how do we get into the habit of putting away money for investment?
Yeah, thanks. So, it is the same conversation we actually have for the rest of our lives. And the sooner we get our head around it, the better. We always feel like we don't have enough to save, or we can't save enough to matter. And I think the first thing to teach the youngsters is that time is your friend. The magic of compounding. Einstein called it the seventh wonder of the world. And really what it means is the longer you have your money invested for, the more money you can make without doing anything. So I love looking at this table of examples. I try and show youngsters, if you start investing at the age of 20, just 300, let's say it's 320 Rand a month, and you invested that for the next, until you were 65, and you made 10% a year on that. That would be worth roughly 3 million Rand.
you go and start investing that same, to invest when you're 30, you need to invest closer to 900 Rand to achieve the 3 million Rand. When you're 40, it's well over 2,300 Rand a month. And when you're 50, you need over 30,000 Rand a month just to get to the same end point as 300 Rand a month will give you if you start today. So you try and sort of give them this context that they can maybe go, oh, okay, 3 million Rand sounds like a lot of money, and 300 Rand sounds like a really small amount of money. So, yeah, I mean, that's doable. Most people can find a few hundred Rand, whether it's a few less energy drinks or a few less beers on the jol with their friends or whatever the case is. So it's very doable. And the first thing they must get their head around is that everything helps. Everything will make a difference.
I think when people get introduced, especially at a young age, to investing, they have dreams of driving Ferraris very soon. So they expect the return to be almost immediate, instant gratification. But what would you say about having time in the market and making sure that your investment is over a long period of time?
You know, the beauty of the time is that, you know, if you are getting just a 10% return on your money will double every 7 years. So that money will double on its own, and it'll double again, and it'll double again. So the longer you hold that money in a place where it's generating some kind of return, those long-term goals will come. The Ferraris, the cars, the houses. That'll be, you know, you'll be so much better of a position in the long term. And so time is your friend. And I don't think youngsters understand that, because you feel bulletproof and you feel like you're going to live forever.
Nothing
and you'll make enough money one day.
When we look at then compounding, and I want you to explain just the concept of compounding and how that can work in your favor. You've called it the seventh wonder of the world. Well, you say Einstein said that's what it was. But if I put away my money, how does it compound to reach a point where I say, wow, I think of a small little fortune?
Yeah, so, yeah, I think, it's a great question. So we all talk about compounding quite casually because we know what it means. But if you don't understand it, you're missing something really important. So the sense of compounding is that your earnings are earning. That's the way I try and, think about it is, so you've saved money and you go and put your money in the bank and you're getting some return on your interest, or if you invest it, you're getting a return on that investment. But if you hold on to it long enough, the amount of investment or return you're getting on the other returns you've already got starts to become so big, it's like a snowball rolling down a hill. And it starts to get bigger and bigger, and it outweighs even the money you're putting in the end. So it's kind of, you have to get there, sort of allow them to try and visualize that compounding effect.
Let's talk about the role of interest then when you start investing, because when we talk about the South African Reserve Bank hiking interest rates, and we always talk about, debt repayments and, repayment for cars and the roof over your head. But if those interest rates are high and you are invested in the market, it could work in your favor.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're invested and you're earning interest and rates are high, you're earning a better rate of return. Or if you can invest in the market in a great company or great investment that makes a return that is higher than the rate of interest on your debt or on your house, for example, you're eventually going to be able to pay it off more easily because you're growing faster than your debt is growing. But of course, the debt conversation is a tricky one, and so it needs to be balanced in terms of, I wouldn't advocate having too much debt and while you're trying to save.
As I'm investing, as a young 20-something-year-old, how do I set the goals? Are they short-term? Are they every 10 years?
That's a good question. I think you need probably a couple of goals. So a shorter-term one to help them get a sense of, what this outcome can be, 5 to 10 years, something they can see and taste and touch and feel, but also have some of the longer-term goals, because you don't want to save for 10 years and then spend it all and you're back to zero. So you kind of need to stagger the outlook. If they're going to want a house at some point, they're going to maybe want to travel extensively, or they're going to, maybe want a nice car. Just let them just put off a little bit put that desire to own everything immediately on credit, etc., on the back burner and just see that goal come towards you over time. So I would encourage them to have a few goals of things that really matter and be patient.
How do they get themselves in a position where they can invest? Because as soon as you get a salary, all of a sudden there are responsibilities to take care of. You're renting out a place, you need a small car, a city runner to get you to work. You now start paying for petrol and you need to pay for insurance. How do they make sure that they dissect their salary in a way that it would leave them at least a little bit for them to start putting away money?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the important point is save first. If you wait until you say, well, let me see what I've got left over after all my expenses and my going out with my friends and whatever, the money's gone by then. We all know what it's like. I think it's important to say, I need to save something. I'm going to start with my savings. Then I will allocate how much money do I need to survive, and then how much is what I want. And, there's a sort of, there's the 50-30-20 rule. Maybe 50% of what you make is something you can't live with. You can't go without rent. You can't go without food. But then there's 30% of things you just enjoy. You want that luxury coffee and you want those nice treats and whatnot. But, you need to set aside, say, 10 or 20 or 30% of what you're earning. That is savings. And savings must form part of the necessity. It must be part of the needs. It mustn't be something that, okay, I'll do it when I can. It definitely doesn't work that way, and you'll never feel like you have enough.
I want us to give a practical example when we talk about paying yourself first, what is called reverse budgeting. How can somebody set up the account in a manner that they pay themselves first and they make sure that money's gone to the side so that when the debit orders start coming, they've still got their savings in their account?
Yeah, that's exactly what you need to be thinking about. So I would encourage people the youngsters to invest via debit order. You can go to any number of sites, and we can talk about these platforms, and you can set up a debit order. And ideally, you can set it up to be the first debit order that comes off your account in terms of date, or comes off at the same time as the most important things. And so that it's not about at the end of the month we'll take the money off. You take it off at the beginning. The moment you receive your paycheck, the savings comes off, the debit order goes off into your investment account, and then it's not even on the table. It's not a conversation as to whether you're going to make that saving or not.
How important then is to make investing one of the necessities, right? When we budget, we probably put groceries down, we probably put petrol or transport spend down. How important is it to have it right up there, up top in that list?
It's absolutely so important. Human nature gets the better of us so often. We always think, well, next month, this month's a bit tight, I'll save next month, or I'll save the next month. It can't be voluntary. It must actually be a habit. You need to put yourself in a position where the saving component is something that happens automatically, and the voluntary part is what you do with the rest of the money. And it has to become a force of habit, and it's not that easy. Well, it's easy for some and it's not easy for others, but it comes with discipline and practice, and just starting small. It doesn't matter how small you start. Once you start, it becomes much easier to build on that.
Then when we look at some of the products that are available in South Africa in our market that are also quite affordable as first-time investors in our 20s, what are we looking at? What do they entail? Because we often, as we report as financial journalists, we'll talk about gold and we'll talk about the price of oil and also currencies, but there's more to investing than that.
Absolutely, and there's never been a better time to be an investor. One of the keys. Okay, so there's a number of easy platforms. So things have changed significantly from when I was in my 20s. You've got the likes of Easy Equities, Satrix now, Shift. There's Clarity. There's a number of other providers, and so one that's easy to invest. The setup process is you can do it in a day, and the other thing is you can buy fractional shares. So if you want to just buy 200 Rand of a share, you can buy 200 Rand of the share, even if you only own half the share. In the old days, you had to buy, if a share was 1,000 Rand per share, you had to buy 1,000 Rand at least of that share to own the share, and you couldn't buy less. Nowadays, you can invest any amount, I think that's really important. And then the other important thing is you have ETFs, which mean if you're not particularly inclined to worry about which companies to choose and what should I invest in, this one or that one, you can invest globally through almost every major geography in the world now. You can invest in ETFs in South Africa. You can invest in the US, in the NASDAQ, so the tech stocks. You can invest in India. You can invest in China. You can invest in Europe. You can invest in Chinese internet. There's never been so much choice. And I mean, maybe that is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah,
but you can
too much
diversify
choice.
your portfolio. Yeah, I mean, it can be, but it's also a wonderful opportunity to learn what investing is all about and to diversify that risk. I think it's a really exciting time to be an investor.
So you're saying ETFs, exchange traded funds, are almost like little baskets where you can put your money in different portfolios, whether it be in the tech sector, whether you're looking at companies that are mining or the top 40 companies on the JSE. Just break down how those exchange traded funds help set up your portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely a great question, and why it's such a good tool is, as you said, so you have the Satrix 40, for example, in South Africa. If you buy that ETF, you're buying a piece of the biggest 40 companies in South Africa, and you get a little bit of each of those. If you buy 1,000 Rand of the Satrix ETF, you get a little piece of each and every company that makes up a total of that 1,000 Rand of value. And so you don't have to decide which company is a good one and which one's a bad one. You get this basket of companies. And so immediately you're diversified. You don't have to worry about, did I pick a good one or a bad one? And that is really powerful. And the beauty is now you even have a selection of ETFs, again, globally. You can buy that 40 equivalent in America, and you can buy it in Europe, and you can buy it in China, and you can buy it in India. So you can even buy a basket, or you can buy the MSCI World. You can buy an ETF that gives you a little bit of most companies in the world, up to, I think it's 3,000 of the world's biggest companies. So there's really, really wonderful opportunity to own a little bit of a lot.
Let's talk then about the realities of investing. We often talk about the perks of earning money and, growing your wealth, but money can also be lost. How important is it to sit on your hands and wait for the market cycles to work in your favor?
This is probably the number one lesson to learn, especially at a young age. Don't try and sell out. Don't panic. If you look back over 100, 150 years, there's actually more than 150 years of stock market history. The single best investment is actually equity, so shares, owning companies. Because companies grow for you. There's a management team out there working hard to grow their business. And you must know that even if the share price goes up or down, that company is still working hard behind the scenes to deliver. So the mistake people make is they sell when things look bad. And you're seeing this, for example, with the Trump tariffs and all this chaos going on. People tend to sell, but the problem is they don't know when to buy it back. And you end up actually destroying value. The best thing you can do is to keep buying and perhaps buy even more when you see sort of uncertain times and you see a market sell-off. This is a pattern that plays out over and over again over decades in the market.
So whenever there's chaos, a lot of the shares will, of course, drop in value, as you say. Let's talk about tech shares, for instance, that dropped significantly as those tariffs were announced. It's also an opportunity to buy them cheap, isn't it? Because as that price drops, if you're in a good position to buy a little bit more, that's when you should be going in.
Yes, exactly. So the human instinct, the human emotion is to say, oh dear, there's tariffs, things look bad, I need to sell. But the right move is actually to say, things will pass, tariffs will come and go, eventually this company will still be here. This is actually a chance to buy it 20% cheaper than I bought it last month. And it's really should be seen as an opportunity, especially when you're young. You've got 40 years to make money. You don't need to worry about what happens in the next 6 months or the next year even.
Let's talk about the thing that most initial investors dread, doing the homework of researching. which exact companies you're going to be putting your money in, asking the right questions, getting advice from certified professionals to help them get them into a position where they put their money where it's right.
And that is, so everyone has different sort of DNA, and I think it's important to understand. Some people want to know and understand the inner workings and understand investments and get close to the stocks, etc., and have decisions. And they should be, in my view, they should be a little more proactive. They should make decisions around which ETFs they buy, and they should maybe even buy some individual companies that try and develop interest. For example, they will understand a little more about their own finances, and I think that's really important. You can tell them, well, if you like your Apple phone so much, why don't you buy some Apple shares? You can actually own a piece of that company. And so you get them really interested. And for those who are perhaps not as inclined to be that concerned about it, establish the habit, go and speak to any advisor, if you like, and set up a savings plan, a retirement annuity that will do the thinking behind the scenes for you, and you just have to commit to the saving, and the rest is done for you.
But here's the tricky part. The dividends come, they get paid out. We could get a bit excited, especially in our 20s, to say, my investments are paying off. I got money in my account. What do we do? Do we celebrate those by withdrawing, or do we reinvest? I mean, this is the tough question for me when I started out investing.
Yeah, you absolutely should be reinvesting that. I mean, the magic of compounding does, benefit even more by the reinvestment, by continuing to reinvest. And a reminder, it looks, if you just think about it in percentage terms, it might be a certain amount of rands. It might not look that big in the beginning, but if you think about it, like I said, if you just get 10% back on your money every year and reinvest it, you're going to double your money in 7 years. I mean, that's phenomenal. And then if you're still working for 40 years, you're going to double your money, more than 5 times. It's so just be patient, save that saving, and pay yourself first and be patient. You'll be thankful in the long term.
What are we looking at as we invest? Are we watching podcasts? Are we watching Bloomberg, listening to The Money Show? What other ways can we get information that will make sure that we're on the right track?
Yeah, I think that's great. So watching, again, there are so many amazing podcasts, probably too many, and it's a little bit easy to be overwhelmed. Start with the mainstream. This show, for example, is a great idea. And look at where you're interested. So find out if you want to invest in South Africa. There's a lot of local sources. There's Business Day TV and a number of others, and a number of podcasts. And then also there's the Money Web, etc. That they have podcasts, they have newsletters, and also globally. I mean, information is very readily available. I mean, I could suggest a few podcasts, and also reading books. Reading books is not dead. I certainly think. If you truly are interested in learning, some of the greats, you can read books from Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, some of the greatest investors of our time, and you can get all of that information at your fingertips. And so I would definitely suggest picking up a book, or at least listening to a podcast about the book and some of the lessons learned. And that's another thing you can do. There's a lot of podcasts talking about the greatest investors and how they do it and what they do. So that's another easy way in.
That was our investment school, going through the 6 easy steps to help your young adult build wealth. The biggest takeaway for me is being patient and letting your money compound. Grant Nader, Portfolio Manager at Benguela Global Fund Managers. Thank you.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking. Absa is a proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa 2025.
Well, it is 8 o'clock. The Money Show back tomorrow. Let's talk money then.